and I think Albertans want to share my view.
We don't care that you don't care that we don't care.
Don't care.
Now that might sound small, but think about it.
We don't care that you don't care that we don't care.
Alberta already trades more with...
Anyways,
Culturally, Alberta has more in common with...
don't care.
Hello, it's August 2025. Now, I never thought there would be so much that needed to be said about this psyop of the Western provinces, specifically Alberta, leaving Canada, but here I am. Now, this video is inspired by videos that people have been posting talking about this and everything else. And really the comment section is what really inspired this video. And before I get into the meat and potatoes of this video with regards to the history of Canadian oil, I'm going to debunk another false narrative that's being really pushed by whomever. Now, I'm going to stop here for a moment. I do realize that now, especially now, with AI, there's a lot of fake accounts, we'll call them, that are being run by AI and making comments, say, for example, supporting the separation movement, as well as people who are paid, for example, to support this in comment sections and get people all riled up. And then there'd be some people who actually buy into it all. But this is really not addressing them as much as others who would come along and read their comments, perhaps even replies, that might just buy into it all. So the thing that I wanted to debunk in this video right off the top is this false narrative of how it was Albertans who pulled the oil out of the ground. Now, what this implies is born and raised Albertans doing all the hard work and deserving whatever, all the glory and riches and fame or whatever. But that's all false. Most of the people working, for example, in the Alberta oil fields came from other provinces. Take, for example, Newfoundland. There are a lot of people from that province went to work in the oil fields. I want to segue for a moment here because some of the narrative, false narrative that's been spreading around is how Alberta is carrying the poorer provinces and they're not liking it, which is false. You know, what's the number? 1 in 5, 20% of Albertans want to become American nonsense, which I already debunked in the previous video. So these people from these other provinces, as a descriptive poorer provinces, went to work in the oil fields, and if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't have had the manpower, Alberta, to extract the oil and become wealthy. So we have people from other provinces going to Alberta to work in the oil fields to make good money. Why not? Albertans that were born and raised didn't complain. Alberta government didn't complain. Now they're complaining, apparently, allegedly. Actually, there's only a couple of political nutters that are really pushing their own personal agendas, but I discussed this in previous videos as well. Now, how do you know that everyone that either moved to or worked in Alberta in the oil fields were there for the money? Because when you take, for example, the fires that took place around 2015 around Fort Mac and basically shut down everything, a lot of destruction from these fires and everything else. And I mean, there's also controversy about how do those fires start? Why do those fires start? Etc. I'm not going down that conspiratorial path, although, you know, who knows really at this point. But after, during and after all that, there was a huge exodus of people leaving Alberta, going back to their province of origin because there's no work. And not only were people from these other provinces leaving, but born and raised Albertans leaving to find work, for example. Now, a lot of these people did go to other provinces to work in oil fields, like in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, I believe Ontario, whatever other provinces. But the point is, they were there for the money. And once there was no work, they left. And we see residuals of this. For example, if you look up ghost shopping malls, for example, in Calgary, they spent, I don't know how much, like a crazy amount of hundreds of millions of dollars to build this mall. And it was completed around the time the fire started, and the mall is vacant. People are walking through the mall. You can walk through it, videotaping, nothing in there. Because the anticipation was, you know, the oil was making lots of money, people would be shopping, spending money and everything else, and everything would just keep blossoming. So we see that, those residuals from the oil being impacted from the fires. So that is debunked. It wasn't born and raised Albertans as implied. It was actually people from other provinces, and not just working hands-on in the fields, you know, getting all dirty and everything else. This all went all the way up to administration type of work and people who, for example, doing geologists and whatever else that is needed to make everything happen, and scientists and whatever, coming from other provinces. This is not to say that Alberta did not have or does not have their own, because they do have programs at college and university levels being taught. But a lot of people are coming from other provinces. Now, what is important to know is the history of Canadian oil and how everything evolved and how Alberta specifically became the richest province in Canada. So in the 1880s, now I'm going to do my best to try to remember dates and events and everything else. I have to refresh my memory on this. This is something that you learn and you just kind of like, okay, follow it away, thinking you'll never need it. So here I am needing it and trying to remember everything. So it's around the 1880s where Ontario, I'm emphasizing Ontario oil companies came together to create Imperial Oil. And they did this to stop American oil companies, Standard Oil, for example, from taking over and benefiting from Canadian oil. Ontario did that, okay? And it was after that, and I'm just kind of skip through the history because I don't want to make this a 5-hour video. It was after that the American oil companies had dropped the price of oil, and this really impacted the Canadian oil industry. Now, for a lot of people who may think that all this oil stuff and what current governments are doing and everything else is something unique to today, well, in the late 1800s, the Canadian government had removed all tariffs from foreign countries, which really opened the door for foreign oil companies to dominate Canada. Now, by the early 1900s, Standard Oil, American oil companies, had some serious legal problems. And this kind of set the stage for future events with Canadian oil. By now, Standard Oil owned most of Imperial Oil. Now, in the 1950s, new oil was found in Alberta, and that was great. However, keep in mind, American oil companies were already acquiring most of Canadian oil, despite the fact that Imperial Oil dominated the western part of Canada and Standard Oil took over the eastern part of Canada. But slowly what we see over time is how they would just basically take over Canada as a whole. Now I want to segue for a moment here, because some of the comments people are relying on in the comment section was how it was the Americans that helped, for example, Alberta Oil to prosper, or whatever it is that they're claiming, which is absolutely ridiculous. American oil companies, Standard Oil, were not in it to benefit Canada, but Americans. So that nonsense was just pure nonsense. But these are some of the arguments that are being made. Now, by the 1970s, 1980s, we had American oil companies just simply making the oil prices go bonkers, which again impacted Canadian oil, which really impacted Canadians, especially Albertans. So my whole point with the history here that perhaps a lot of people are not aware of or overlook is that it was Canada overall that either helped create, helped maintain, helped develop, and even helped the Western provinces in various ways when they were going through hard times. It almost seems like some of these arguments are founded on the fact that when Canada became Canada that is known today, that Alberta was always this wealthy, oil-rich, province from day one, which is completely false. You have to remember there was a time when North America overall, Canada, was being founded. That's a whole crazy topic in itself. But anyway, where there was nothing. And Alberta, pretty much like everywhere else, when they were repopulating, this part of North America had to start from scratch. They didn't do it alone, whether it be Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Canada as a whole, as a nation, stuck together. And Albertans did not build the empire that they once had and are trying to reestablish alone. It was people from other provinces that went there for the money, but it also helped Alberta. And now we see, as I said before and addressed in previous videos, how we have a few political nutters pushing their own agenda, and we have to keep in mind this whole psyop is being driven not by federal or even provincial or local politicians, but there's something bigger going on, because we see the same type of thing happening all around the world simultaneously. Perhaps just a coincidence. Anyway, I just want to address, debunk another point that's apparently being or trying to be relied on. Talk a little bit about the history in brief. You should really look into it yourself, and you'll understand the nonsense that's playing out here in Canada. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Canada as a whole got a sense of that feeling of hurt and betrayal with the way the Americans are treating us right now, treated like our interests don't matter, treated like our economic imperatives aren't important.
Well, that's really good price.
Yeah?
Well, that's really good price. But you know what? If you buy from me, put it on invoice, but you can talk to me later. Maybe, you know what I'm talking about, right? We can give you some kickbacks.
There's truth and there's untruth. But if you stick to the truth, even against the whole world, you're still not mad.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me all the time, when is it going to get easier? When you die.